You guys, I actually liked this season. Hi you guys, it's Arielle. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you guys are all doing well. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my review of Emily in Paris Season 2. Now, Emily in Paris might give us an idea of what it's like to live in Paris or in France. How realistic that is a whole other story. And even though we might enjoy watching Emily in Paris for the escapism, we really can't deny that if we're trying to learn about the French culture or the French language, we have to be watching media and content that is French. So before we get into my review of Season 2, I want to take a sec to talk about France Channel, who I'm really excited to be partnering with for this video. France Channel is a streaming platform entirely dedicated to France, French culture, and French entertainment in the US. It's kind of like a French Netflix. It has an unreal amount of French movies, series, documentaries, and even live international news, and all of the content is available to English speakers through either English or French subtitles. Watching French content from a platform like France Channel that comes from French directors, producers, writers, and actors not only allows you to develop your French language skills, but also gives you an inside look on French culture and humor and social behaviors that you wouldn't necessarily get if you were watching content from a platform that was outside of France, like Netflix. The benefits of supporting France Channel are relatively immediate for us. We can just log in and start streaming content. But I really want you guys to think about the long-term effects of supporting a platform like this. If in the future we want to ensure that the French creative voice is still heard, we have to make sure that we're supporting them not just with our time, but with our money. Otherwise, they'll disappear. Now, I thought I would log in and show you guys what's on my watch list at the moment. I'm really excited to watch both of the OSS 117 movies. This is like the French comedy version of James Bond. And I'm probably the most excited to watch Les Visiteurs Bastide. This is the third movie in the Visiteurs franchise, and it's about a knight and a squire who time travel. This movie also has Jean Reno, who you might know from The Pink Panther. I think he's such a funny French actor. And something else that I really like about France Channel and use quite often is the access to France 24, which is like a news station in both French and English. They offer a monthly subscription for $7.99 or an annual subscription for $79.99, and of course, they have a free 7-day trial where you can cancel at any time. You can also use my discount code Margarita15 and you'll get 15% off either one of the subscriptions. If you guys want to support this channel and develop your knowledge on French culture and language, then I would highly recommend that you check out France Channel. I'll leave the link and the discount code below. Now back to the review. Okay, so I'll be honest, I really preferred this season to season 1 because everything felt more real, we're more familiar with the characters, and at this point they've known Emily long enough for a friendship or a connection to form. Because of this, I really felt like this season was a lot more wholesome and interesting, and it really reminded me of my own life here in Paris. And I really feel like because they started to develop the more secondary characters, they had a lot more substance to work with than just telling us how amazing Emily and the American perspective is. So yeah, in this review, instead of dividing everything up into the 87 categories of things I hate about this show, I'm just gonna keep it to 2. We're gonna talk about what I think is problematic with this show, but also, shockingly, what I really enjoyed. Let's start with the positive before I spill the tea. The first thing that really stood out to me and that I enjoyed about season 2 is that Americans and the American perspective are no longer shown as like God's gift to the French people. In this season, a lot more attention is paid to the fact that France and the French culture is independent from the US, and that one American marketing manager isn't just going to be able to fly in and change everything for the better with the American perspective. To see the cultures working together and learning from one another was a lot more interesting than just Emily bulldozing over the French for the win. Right off the bat in episode 1, Sylvie adds Luc to the Champère account.
I thought Champère was my account.
Well, champagne is a French product, and I thought it might be better if Luc handled things.
Now, I didn't love that Sylvie did this in such a rude way because, again, we're showing French female colleagues as bitchy. And on top of that, if you look at what the actual marketing campaign is, like opening the champagne, spraying it, wasting it, I'm not so sure that French people are the target audience, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me as to why Sylvie would want to put Luc on that account as opposed to Emily. But I do appreciate the effort that they're making in season 2 to course correct from season 1, where Emily was the lead behind every single successful campaign. Then in episode 4, we have Sylvie, who walks in and shares her idea for marketing leeks through the Magic Leek Soup, which is a French weight loss secret for women. And because this client is looking to sell a French product to American people through this idea of a French secret recipe, we can really see how Sylvie's experience and her knowledge of the French culture is very valuable. Problematic weight loss campaign aside, Emily does step in and she's like, okay, good idea, but soup, I mean, I don't know if that's how we're going to reach the women of America. It needs to be something a little bit more simple, and so she comes up with this idea of a cold pressed juice. And so you see this amazing synergy between the French perspective and the American perspective, and together they have this really great marketing campaign idea. And in general, it's just really nice to see other people at the Savoir agency have good ideas, like in episode 6 when Julien is on a photo shoot for the Pierre Cadieux collection, and he has the idea to sort of talk to and convince the photographer to work with them on the Vespa campaign. Moving on to the second thing that I really liked about this season is that French people were finally speaking French. For a show that is set in a French country, where the vast majority of characters are French and the whole plot is centered around a French marketing agency, it really is nice to see a lot more of a focus on the language in season 2. In season 1, I really took issue with the fact that everyone around Emily spoke English to her and that she faced absolutely no problems with the language barrier. At the start of episode 2, we have Emily who goes to Laurent G's and asks for a bottle of Champère. And you see Laurent turn to the server and say, "Va me chercher une bouteille de cette piquette à la cave." And it's funny because Emily doesn't understand French, she doesn't understand what's being said, and when Laurent says, "Va me chercher une bouteille de la piquette," he's saying, "Go and get that cheap shit." I also really like to see some French slang being integrated into the vocabulary of the English characters. For example, in episode 3 at Emily's birthday party, Mindy calls on Emily to do a toast by saying, "Meuf, do a toast," and meuf in slang means woman because meuf is femme, backwards. And they finally have Emily consistently going to French class in this season. In episode 4, it absolutely serves Emily right that she's the only student that doesn't go on into level 2. I mean, she only went to 2 French classes in season 1, so she deserves it. In episode 4 as well, while Camille and Emily are feuding, we definitely do get a good idea of what the workplace would be like for an Anglophone that doesn't speak any French.
Champère est très fantastique. Et très bien.
Even though it's definitely vindictive, when Camille asks that all of the business meetings be conducted in French, and Sylvia's like, I mean, yes, we're a French company, you can really see how lost and disoriented and confused Emily is. She literally cannot perform or contribute anything to the meeting because she doesn't speak the language, she doesn't understand the language. And I do think that this is a much more realistic portrayal of how an Anglophone would be working in a French office. Like, they wouldn't be the top dog, the top marketing agent like Emily was in season 1. In episode 4 as well, we have Camille's iconic response to Emily's very badly written French letter. I definitely thought that the writers would have Camille forgive Emily instantly, but definitely not.
Tout comme je comprends pas un putain de mot de ta lettre. Fous-moi la paix. Espèce de sociopathe analphabète.
I love that this was a mistake she couldn't quick fix herself out of, especially with such a pathetic French vocabulary. You might be surprised here that I also found the clothing in this season a lot more realistic. I barely saw Emily wearing stilettos running around on the cobblestone roads of Paris that she would definitely break an ankle on. I mean, putting Emily aside for just a sec, I really did like how straight away in episode 1, they had a very realistic outfit for Mathieu. He's there with sneakers and jeans and a t-shirt and like a casual blazer, and this is very much representative of what a French man would wear. Back to Emily though, throughout the season she dons flats and bottines with a cute little heel as well as a tote bag, and I really do think that these are staples of a French woman's closet. I really do like to see her character development exemplified through the clothing, and even though she does still stick out, it's a little bit less. She's a little bit more subtle because they have added in these realistic elements to her wardrobe. I really did love that they added the tote bag to a lot of her outfits because that truly is something you would not find a French woman without. The fourth thing that I liked about season 2 is that they finally integrated people of color and other cultures into the show, and in a really meaningful way, because the roles that these characters had were powerful and significant. We have Gregory Elliott Dupré, an iconic fashion designer who's played by Jeremy O. Harris, an American playwright, actor, and philanthropist. In episode 3, they take us to the hammams at the Grande Mosquée de Paris. In episode 4, we're introduced to the first POC love interest, Alfie. We love to see it. He's played by Lucien Laviscount, a British actor. Then in episode 5, we have our first POC client for Savoir, who is with the Chopard brand and Happy Hearts collection. She's played by Inès Raoult, who's a transgender French-Algerian model. The fifth reason why I really liked season 2 is because Emily is no longer portrayed as this revolutionary American marketing wizard that can save all of the stupid French people despite having zero knowledge of the French language or culture. Episode 2 and 3 did a really good job of correcting this season 1 blunder. In episode 2, Emily allows Gregory Elliott Dupré to take a picture sitting on the suitcase with Pierre Cadeau's face and to post it on social media, not knowing that Pierre and Gregory are enemies and that the only reason Gregory wants to do this is to take a jab at his competitor. I loved this because Emily's mistake shows how her lack of French culture and brand knowledge is actually detrimental to the French branch of the company. When this whole ordeal happens, Julien steps up and supports Cadeau, and Sylvie, who sees this, gives Julien the account instead of Emily, and frankly, he deserves it. I love that Emily is seeing repercussions for her lapse of judgment and knowledge. In this same storyline in episode 3, we also have Sylvie, who goes to Pierre, and with her clever and confident ideas, she sways Pierre to accept the Romoa collab. This is the type of portrayal that Sylvie's character deserves. She didn't get so high up in her career by piggybacking on others like Emily. She's a talented, smart French woman, and I love to see it. This season, we also don't have all of the men in Paris tripping over their own 2 feet to impress Emily. Like Alfie in episode 5, Emily asks him to go to a cafe after class to work on their project, and he just straight up goes, "Nope, I'm busy. I'll text you later when I'm free."
There's a little cafe downstairs.
No, I'm busy tonight.
And I think she's low-key kind of shocked that he doesn't immediately accept her offer. But yeah, I love how the love interest in this season doesn't just fall onto Emily's lap like literally everything else did in season 1. Also, what I thought was so interesting and funny is that Emily at work is actually getting projects that are suited to her American perspective. In episode 4, Emily gets to lead the leak account, which might seem like a funny punishment because it's not really a luxury product and no one really wants that account. But honestly, this brand is trying to target an American audience. They want to boost their sales in the US. And so it actually makes so much sense that these are the types of clients that Emily gets to work with. Way more sense than a French fashion designer or champagne. The sixth thing that I love about season 2 is that when it comes to French culture, they are finally starting to get some things right. If we circle back to the press fiasco between Pierre and Gregory in episode 2, which Emily caused, we have Emily there who's like trying to work and she's calling her colleagues who are like, it's the weekend, leave us alone. And Camille, who's like, it's Saint-Tropez, we're not here to work, babe. And it is a little dramatic that both Julien and Luc tell her that it's illegal to work in France on the weekends. That actually is a huge part of French culture, the fact that significantly fewer things are open on the weekend, and especially the Sunday when basically everything is closed, especially in the smaller cities. A lot of outsiders, like Emily, see this as inconvenient because they're used to having everything accessible to them 24/7. And it's so different because in North America, like, people use the weekend to check off their to-do list, to do their shopping, and it's like the malls are crowded and the grocery stores are crowded, and it's just really not like that on the weekend in France. It's very much a time of rest and enjoyment.
But Emily, you go to Saint-Tropez to party, not to work. Going to Ibiza to do your taxes.
Well, why can't I do both?
In episode 2, still in Saint-Tropez, I really liked how they showed Sylvie's body coming out of the water. It's not photoshopped, she doesn't have plastic surgery from what I can see. She looks very natural, she looks beautiful, and she looks her age. This appreciation of the natural female body is genuinely something I love about France. I don't feel the pressure to wear makeup all the time, to get my lips done, to get Botox injections, because no one in France, or very few people in France, do those kind of procedures. Looking your age as you age is not as stigmatized as I feel like it is in North America. In episode 3, I love that Sylvie is completely horrified by the deep dish Chicago pizza that Madeleine sends Emily for her birthday.
It says this can stay good for up to 6 months in the freezer.
Oh, quelle horreur.
Food in France and Europe in general is just a lot different from what we would have in North America because the regulations here are a lot more strict when it comes to what chemicals and colorings can be put into food. It really did shock me at first when I moved here because I didn't have access to like 80% of the foods that I would eat back home in Canada. It killed me in episode 4 to see Emily's reaction to the ending of Jules and Jim, where she turns to Luke and she's like,
Did we have to see them cremated and their bones crushed to dust?
Of course. It's beautiful. The love is eternal.
And this style of ending for French romance movies is very well known. It really does remind me of my own reaction to the movie Jeux d'enfants, which is very much a cult classic love story featuring Marion Cotillard. It has a very similar ending where the two main characters, who are very much in love, decide that they never want to be apart, and in order to do so, die, intertwined as concrete is being poured on top of them. In episode 7, Emily is shocked that the menu chez Laveau is changing on a daily basis, and Gabrielle sort of explains to her that the menu has to be redone to reflect all of the fresh products that are in season or that are available at the markets. And this is a really special part about French gastronomy. When you're in France, always look for restaurants with the chalkboard menu because they rewrite it based on fresh produce on a daily basis. Also in episode 7, we have Sylvie's reaction to Emily and Madeleine's reunion in Paris, and it is very much spot on for a French person's reaction when confronted with very loud and overly enthusiastic Americans.
Oh my god! I cannot believe that we're launching Pelotech in Paris! Tell me everything.
Okay, so I'll start at the beginning.
Also in episode 7, we have Alfie who tells Emily that he feels like he's stuck in a city where no one understands him, and this is a much more realistic expression of feelings than what we saw in season 1, when Emily was like running around the city and had absolutely no problems integrating in a country where she didn't speak the language. In episode 3, the city is finally featured under some rain, which is very common weather for late winter and early spring. Sometimes the 15 consecutive days of gray skies and rainy weather will get even the best of us. On the theme of weather, I also love how in episode 7 they show how hot Paris can get in August. It truly is unbearable and absolutely no one has AC. I think it's also pretty funny in episode 7 that they show the complete struggle of trying to find a fan in Paris during the heat waves. I can tell you confidently that by the time that August rolls around, there is not a single fan left in stock in any store. And my last point on this topic is that I do think that it's pretty cool in episode 7 that they show La Défense. It's a neighborhood that I never even knew existed before I moved to Paris. La Défense is like a modern style business district. And the final reason that I like season 2 is that it was so nice to see Emily as a character grow and develop and finally integrate a little bit more into French culture. By season 2, episode 3, Emily has become a little closer to her colleagues and invites them to her birthday dinner, which I think is a lot more realistic now that she knows them. And I think their reactions are realistic as well. They don't invite Emily to their parties, but they're happy to attend her dinner party. And this is kind of how it worked between me and my colleagues and friends as well, at least at the start. It's kind of like the second step of integrating, you know, step 1, you meet them. Step 2, you get a little closer and you reach out, and then step 3, they feel comfortable enough, they built up enough trust to then start inviting you to their events. I think this is an honest reflection of the differences between North American and French cultures. We are a lot quicker to invite someone and include someone in our events, even if we don't know them so well. And French people really do need to take that time to build up the trust and to build up a connection with you. For her birthday as well, it was really nice to see all of the social media posts of people that she feuded with or didn't really get along with in season 1, and this shows growth and that people are starting to warm up to Emily. I also think it's really cute to see her friendship with Luc develop. I thought it was very sweet in episode 3 when he invites her out for lunch for her birthday. If a French colleague does this, it means you're on the road to be friends. In episode 4, Luc takes Emily to the cinema so she can practice her French. And then in episode 6, when Emily is giving this little anecdote to her colleagues about how her and her mom took a Vespa on a fudge tour, despite the fact that he knows absolutely nothing about what a fudge tour is, Luc gives this really cute and genuine reaction.
That's nice. C'est quoi le fudge?
He really is becoming one of my favorite characters. I think he's so funny, and it's really nice this season to see a little bit more of his personality. In episode 5, I really like how Emily presents her campaign in a more calm and honest and vulnerable way.
Okay, so, cards on the table. This is my first restaurant account, so just thinking out loud. Would you prefer a soft opening to get the kitchen up to speed, or do you want to start with a bang?
Bang!
She wasn't over the top smiling or being commanding. She was pitching her idea and reading the room for feedback. Finally, we get to episode 10 after the French Revolution and all of her colleagues have quit Savoir, where her adventure in France kind of comes full circle. When she meets with her old colleagues over lunch and they tell her that they want her to join them and that she's a valued member of their team, it really is validation of her integration. And you kind of see Emily's old, ignorant self mirrored in Madeleine, who absolutely drives everyone up the wall and literally out the door with her American perspective. The final point I want to make on this one is at the end of episode 10 when Emily has to make a decision whether or not to go back to Chicago and be Madeleine's little corporate soldier, go back to the life that is very much planned, the promotion that she's been working her whole life for, or to stay in Paris where the lines are a little bit more blurred and she doesn't really have her future laid out for her. This is something that I think a lot of expats can relate to. Back home in Canada, I was working 3 jobs, I was paying off my student debt, and I always told myself career before starting a family. I wanted that promotion, I wanted that salary. And not to sound dramatic, but then I came to France and I realized that there was just so much more to life and to happiness than succeeding at my career. That people here prioritize quality time with family and friends over money and promotions. And changing my perspective really did change my life in the same way that I think it'll change Emily's life in season 3. So actually you can see there are quite a few things that I liked about season 2. On the whole, I found it a lot more enjoyable and more realistic than season 1. Now let's get to the tea. The first thing I didn't like about season 2 was the fact that the vast majority of secondary characters had little to no development. And in the case of Camille, there was actually regression. She is literally one of the most frustrating characters to watch because she's got a cool job, she's got a great family that lives in an interesting region, she's got lots of French girlfriends. Like, there is so much potential for her to be an interesting character. But she is literally devoid of any personality outside of Gabrielle, and this season she goes from a smart, fun French woman to a vindictive and manipulative child. In episode 1, she very unprofessionally leaves a work meeting for Champère to go to lunch with Sylvie and Emily to talk about Gabrielle. In episode 2, in Saint-Tropez, she has a breakdown on the trip because she misses him. In episode 3, when they're at the hammam and Emily is meeting Camille's friends for the first time, the whole conversation turns on how Camille is sad about Gabrielle. In episode 5, Camille's parents come all the way to the Savoir office in Paris, which is quite a long way from Champagne. And again, the whole meeting is completely derailed by Camille's problem with Gabrielle. In episode 6, after making a pinky promise with Emily that neither one of them would date Gabrielle, she is literally there, right in front of Emily, flirting with Gabrielle and trying to get him back. In episode 8, when everyone is in Champagne filming content for the Champère campaign, Camille is kind of just a dick to Emily. She overtly flirts with Gabrielle all weekend to the point where Emily feels so uncomfortable that she has to leave early. Finally, in episode 10, when Emily knocks on Gabrielle's door to tell him how she's really feeling, Camille interrupts their conversation and goes,
Did I tell you? Gabrielle asked me to move in.
And And it's like, by this point, she's just become such a manipulative friend to Emily. And don't get me wrong, Emily was an awful friend to Camille in season 1, but I just didn't feel like there was any need to completely assassinate Camille's character in the name of revenge. I'm not saying that Camille shouldn't be upset or cry over her breakup with Gabrielle. That is a totally normal emotion to feel, but it really irks me that that is literally the only plot or screen time that Camille gets in season 2. The second thing that I really don't like about this season is that Emily can't do anything on her own. She is constantly asking her friends for last-minute favors. In episode 2, when Camille decides that she's going to join Emily in Saint-Tropez, Emily calls Mindy panicked, demanding that she get on a flight and join Emily and Camille to sort of mediate their discussions. And I just want to know, if Mindy can't even afford rent, how does Emily have the audacity to ask her to book and pay for a last-minute flight? And on the topic of Mindy being exploited, in episode 5, when Emily has to find entertainment or music for the Happy Hearts collection launch on the boat, she thinks of Mindy. And at first you're like, wow, that's great, Emily's getting gigs for her friend. But then Julien goes, I don't think we have it in the budget for live entertainment. And Emily is just like,
Budget may not be an issue. Are you free for lunch?
She is literally exploiting Mindy and her band for free labor and not even thinking twice. And then Mindy actually brings it up. She's like,
by the way, we never discussed the fee for the night.
Oh, well, we never discussed your rent here either.
Ah, okay, good point. Why don't we call it even?
And I mean, fair enough, Mindy is living there for free, but it just feels gross to me that Emily would just assume that Mindy is gonna help her with anything for free. And also, there are 2 other band members who are not living chez Emily, so they're just expected to work for free as well. And while we're on the topic of what frustrates me about Mindy, I'm wondering how she's staying in France without a work visa. Once that expires, she would absolutely have to go home, and if she didn't, they would 10,000% stop her at the airport and probably ban her from re-entering the country for breaking visa laws. Then we get to Gabrielle. And if Camille's purpose this season is to cry over Gabrielle, Gabrielle's purpose is to wait on the every beck and call of Emily. In episode 3, Gabrielle literally pops up out of thin air to save the day when Emily was planning on serving pre-made cordon bleus at her birthday party. He goes out of his way to take her to the market. And again, it just feels like literally no one else in the show has a life and everyone is running on Emily's schedule. In episode 4, it's Gabrielle to the rescue again when Emily has to think of a creative way to market leeks, which is a vegetable that she's never cooked before. And he takes her into the restaurant and spends the whole night teaching her how to cook leeks. And please keep in mind that this is the opening week of his restaurant, okay? This man is busy, he is stressed. And then I almost screamed at the audacity of Emily, who ran off to go have a coffee with Petra, literally after having one single bite of the food that Gabrielle took hours to prepare. And then in episode 10, Luc has this great idea of serving actual cakes at Gregory's Latami cake fashion show, and Emily is like, wow, great idea. But Luc, who's a little bit more realistic, is like, I don't think we're gonna be able to find 80 mini cakes by tomorrow. But of course, we all know the answer. We all know what's going to happen. Emily is going to use Gabrielle and not even think that maybe she's asking a lot when she's asking him to make 80 cakes in less than 24 hours. And Gabrielle, whose entire life and purpose revolves around Emily, will say yes. It's just annoying that Gabrielle, like Camille, has so much potential to be an interesting character, but is literally devoid of any plot or any personality outside of helping Emily. Now, I don't have anything against Alfie, but we definitely need to talk about the train wreck that was episode 8. In this episode, Alfie suggests that him and Emily go on a dinner date. Very cute. But instead of planning a date, he literally calls Emily and is like, oi, let's just go to your mate's pub, yeah? Talking about Chez Lavo, Gabrielle's restaurant. What kind of man would literally put 0 effort into planning their first official date? Then, when they're in the restaurant and talking to Gabrielle, Alfie, the beta finance bro, says that of the 2 of them, Emily has the cushy job. We definitely do not stan a man that doesn't acknowledge how hardworking his woman is. He literally also takes a call during dinner. So rude. And then, the cherry on the cake, as they're leaving the restaurant, Alfie literally belches in Emily's face.
Come here, you.
and leaves her alone at the foot of the restaurant.
I don't think I'm good for anything else but sleep tonight. Take care, yeah? Have a good time.
He doesn't walk her to the door of her apartment, even though it's literally maybe 30 meters away. I need to know who wrote the script for this episode and why they decided to make Alfie the most insufferable finance dude bro. The second thing I hated about this season is the literal fake news that this show spreads about French culture. First of all, I have never seen a dame pipi at a restaurant where you're paying to dine. You might see them in a mall or a train station where payment to enter the washroom is mandatory.
The dame who? The woman who sits outside the loo.
And secondly, dame pipi is an offensive term. It very much reduces the jobs of hard-working women who do a lot more than just sit outside the toilet and expect tips. Also in episode 1, I almost choked when Sylvie goes,
Garçon, je peux avoir un cendrier, s'il vous plaît?
First of all, it's extremely rude. Imagine going to a luxury restaurant and yelling, boy, boy, to get the server's attention. This is not at all normal or acceptable behavior in France. This is very much a fake stereotype. Please don't do this. And secondly, I would also like to note that there is always going to be an ashtray on a table on a terrace. Come on. Again, in episode 1, we have Mathieu who tells Emily that he booked a couchette for their trip from Paris to Saint-Tropez.
By the way, I booked a night train tomorrow. We'll have our own couchettes.
Oh, like a couchette?
Exactly.
First of all, if this type of train really exists, it's definitely a surprise to me. And second of all, French people take the high-speed TGV train, and the trip from Paris to Saint-Tropez would take no more than 4 hours and 51 minutes, which means there really is no need for a couchette. In episode 6, while Mindy is busking, I can confidently tell you that her purse would be stolen in less than a second. Also in episode 6, Emily hijacks a Vespa, and there is no doubt in my mind that she would be run over almost immediately. She has never driven in Paris before, and the traffic is insane. In episode 7, when Emily comes home in the early morning after spending her evening with Alfie at La Défense, I was very disappointed that they didn't show her taking the metro. And I think in general, this show completely fails to show how essential the metro and the public transportation system is to anyone who lives in this city. I guess I kind of do understand why they don't show Emily taking the metro in this show, because it would completely skew this false perception of glamorous lifestyle that they're trying to convey as the norm in Paris. If Emily had taken the metro home from La Défense, she would have had to get on the RER train and then the metro, and people definitely would have been giving her the side-eye for her outfit, and she would probably have been robbed. And finally, in episode 9, we're back at it again with the normalization of affairs in France. We learned that Sylvie was giving Antoine's company a really big discount because they were having an affair, and Antoine's wife knew about it, but she didn't say anything because she wanted the best deal for Antoine. Again, you guys, affairs are not openly talked about, and it is not a common business practice to be getting deals in exchange for an affair. The third reason that I didn't like season 2 is because Emily is still a cringy and annoying character. I absolutely stopped keeping track of every single time that I laughed out loud at Emily's behavior, but here are a few. In episode 1, she tells Gabrielle that it feels like she violated the Prime Directive, and when he asks her what it is, she's like, "My dad was a Trekkie. I'm a cool girl."
It's like I violated the Prime Directive.
The Prime Directive?
It's from Star Trek.
Oh.
My dad was a huge Trekkie and made me watch all the original episodes.
Like, why? Why? Episode 2 in general is very much giving cringe for me. When Emily is talking with Mindy by the pool, Mindy tells Emily that Camille wants to hook up with another guy to get over Gabrielle, and Emily instantly starts pouting and complaining. She's like, "No, this is a girls' trip, no boys allowed." And this confuses me because it actually wasn't a girls' trip that she planned. She was supposed to be there with her little boy toy Mathieu, and her friends flew down just so that she wouldn't be alone. And also, once her friends do get there, she doesn't want to have fun with them. Instead, she wants to work and drag them to Laurent's restaurant where they're promoting Champère. And Camille is definitely confused. She's like, "Cool, but we're not here to work, right?" So Emily eventually caves and lets her girlfriends go to the party, but literally 30 minutes in, she's already harassing them to leave. Instead of engaging with her girlfriends on the dance floor at this party, she's demanding that they go. And when Mindy comes around bringing drinks for them, she literally screams,
Oh, it's the guy in the pool. We're leaving, okay?
Okay.
What? Oh, that was mine.
Throughout the season in general, Emily just comes off as self-absorbed and only concerned with herself. And okay, it's one thing to be a bad friend, but the fact that she just refuses to engage with or have fun with her friends makes her very much a one-dimensional character, and that's why it's so hard to relate to her. Finally, the fourth reason that I didn't like season 2 was the blatant xenophobia. Now, before I get into my examples, I want to clarify my perspective on this because in my review of season 1, a lot of people got angry saying that they just watched the show for escapism, that it's fictional, and that I needed to cool it. But the problem for me is that we as media consumers form our opinions and our worldview based on what we see in the news, in movies, and in TV series. So when a show uses fake and offensive stereotypes about people from a country or a region, it's harmful because the viewers, the audience, start to form their opinions based on what they're seeing on TV. And this brings me to my first case of a blatant xenophobia against Eastern European women through the character of Petra, who goes shopping with Emily and steals a bunch of designer items. She's the only Ukrainian or Eastern European character in the show, and her sole purpose is to be a stupid, ugly thief. And also, I really didn't want to make this comment about her body or her appearance, but if you look at the actress who plays Petra and what she looks like in normal life versus how they created the character Petra, you can see what their agenda is. Overall, her character is not funny. It's an offensive and completely false way of portraying Ukrainian women to the world. Given that this scene has absolutely no value to the plot, I was shocked that it was written in. Like, there was no other purpose to this than to humiliate Eastern European women. Why? Now, my second point on how xenophobia is present in the show is a lot less overt than mocking Ukrainian women through Petra. Now, the show is picking on Americans in a similar way that they picked on the French in season 1. In episode 4, for example, when they're talking about the magic leek soup as a way to market leeks to Americans, all of the French in the room are like, wow, what a great idea. Americans love anything that's fast and easy and about weight loss. They love to take shortcuts. They don't want to work hard for anything. And this is playing into the false American stereotype that everyone is fat and lazy. Now, I'm not American, but I have been there enough times to know that this is incorrect. There are fat and lazy people in every country. You can't just label all Americans that way. And I think the pinnacle of xenophobia against Americans comes through Madeline. I thought Emily was bad, but Madeline did not come to play. In episode 9, Madeline walks into the office and into her first meeting with Savoir carrying a giant Starbucks, which she is slurping, and is completely obnoxious throughout the meeting. In what world would a corporate executive from the US act this way? She is constantly judging Sylvie, who is basically her equivalent in France, and there is no respect from the get-go. She scoffs at the fact that Sylvie has smoked an entire pack before lunch and snarks at the fact that she got to the office before Sylvie, saying,
I'm glad that you're finally here, though. I've been here a while.
She has no respect for how the French do business. At the Maison Laveau perfume party, she's there like grabbing and hugging onto Sylvie. And then at the same party, Madeleine wants to talk business, and the French are like, oh, I don't think anyone's told you, but we don't really talk business at a party. But Madeleine insists. She's like, well, isn't this a party for business? Like, just imagine this. Her client has paid her to organize a promotional party, and instead of letting her client socialize with the press, with clients, with staff, she is insisting that she takes them away from that to talk about how much she's being paid. Madeline is just so unaware. She literally gets off the plane, goes to the office for the first time, and expects everything to be done her way within the first 24 hours. I thought it was hilarious when she's talking to the team about when she wants to launch the next Laveau perfume party.
We should launch in conjunction with the Festival du Camp.
Actually, it's pronounced Cannes.
Oh, you say potato, I say potato.
Imagine going to someone else's country, speaking someone else's language, and then telling them that the pronunciation of their language doesn't matter. I'm sorry, but apples are not the same as apples. you know? And then in episode 10, when the whole team quits, she talks about how thankful she is because they can burn and bury the French standard, and they can now recruit a lot of young and cheaper labor without having to pay severance because everyone quit. She didn't care to resolve the problem or hear people out, and she most certainly does not care about the well-being of her employees. She's just there to bulldoze and run down anyone who's in the way of the American company. I could literally go on and on because every time that Madeline opens her mouth, it's offensive, but I think that Gregory sums it up best when he turns to Emily and asks,
who is this pop-up ad and how do I block it?
Whew. Voila, that is my review of season 2 of Emily in Paris. Even though I do think the show has a lot of things I need to improve on, I definitely enjoyed this season a lot more, and it was for sure better than season 1. Thank you again to France channel for partnering with me on this video. Please go check them out. I'll leave their link down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.